We had heard of course, the crop circles, and our assessment was that from various reports there was an aerial phenomenon component to it, some type of what we considered probable extraterrestrial activity. And so we had a team come here in 92, 93, 94, and again this year in 1995 to do research in the area, but particularly geared towards moving beyond just a skywash, but trying to actually make contact with whoever were making these crop circles in some sort of a context of interspecies communications and relations. So we had a team set up in the farm there below Woodborough Hill, and had been out several nights prior to the night that you mentioned on July 26th. It was actually significant that 2 nights prior to that, on the 24th, just after sunset, with the sky still having a very crystal clear blue quality to it, between 10 and 10:30, a disc-shaped craft catapulted through the zenith of the sky, covering about, I would say, somewhere around 30 degrees of arc, and was quite low, actually, and quite clear, because the air was crystal clear, and you could see the lights going around it counterclockwise in this very unusual pattern. It started raining because we were in a field and cars were on this dirt track that would become very difficult to pass. Most people left. There were 4 people who however, remained behind. I was one of them, and then 3 other members of the team. We went to a paved road on the farm that we were working on there in Alton Barnes, and we're waiting out this rain, which was really quite torrential at times. And at about 12:20 a.m. on the 27th, the wee hours, of course, this is the same night of the 26th, just past midnight, there was a extraordinary event that then began. We had a member of the team who was in a car behind mine come running around, beating on the windows, and I opened it, and he said, "There's a spaceship coming through the field." And I said, "Well, that's very..." I thought he was joking, of course, and I turned, and not far above the field, perhaps 10 feet, was a approximately 100 to 150 foot diameter disc with lights going around counterclockwise, with a sort of a cone or dome on top, with 3 lights on the top of it, 3 or 4 amber lights. Now the lights that were going around counterclockwise were identical, and the shape of this craft was identical to the object that came straight overhead on the 24th at about between 10.
This whole cover-up from the very beginning. They have one of the finest national security intelligence operations on the planet. I mean, a retired Soviet KBG general by the name of Oleg Kalugin, who is now living in Washington, D.C., and he's an advisor and some of our people in government. Oleg Kalugin said, if we had had the intelligence operations in the Soviet Union as good as the one at the Vatican, the Cold War would still be going on. The Berlin Wall would have not fallen, and the Soviet Union would still exist. He says, we always knew that the best damn security intelligence operation on the planet was out of the Vatican. And probably the reason is that every damn priest in every country on the planet, Catholic priest, is in a sense an agent of the Vatican Intelligence Secret Service. And they're deeply concerned about the location and the appearance in our solar system of a planet known as NIBIRU, which has already been photographed, and I have a picture of it here in a moment to share with you. The 10th planet has been photographed by an astro, what do they call them, where the telescopes are? Well, anyhow, they've taken pictures of the damn thing in southern Chile because it has appeared below the ecliptic in the southern hemisphere. It's already been photographed by at least 3 cameras and telescopes. It's one of the biggest secrets in our government today. The reality and the presence of the 10th planet. Our government has known about it since 1980. Anyhow, it's real, it's there, and we're going to see it up here. I've been involved in this whole thing for 40 years, and I've been deeply involved in it for the last 20. And let me tell you, take it for what it's worth, in my view, there ain't going to be no disclosure. Not like they expect. They expect the government to someday have a news conference and stand up and say, hey, we got a little surprise for you. Guess what? We've been keeping it from you. We're sorry about that, but it was for your own good, you know. You guys weren't ready for this. You probably couldn't handle it. So, but now we're going to tell you, oh yes, aliens are here. They've been here for quite a while. Oh, they're all over the place. Well, they are indeed all over the damn place. But you're not going to get a government disclosure because that's not how government works. First of all, they're a bunch of nitwits in some cases. They're not capable of giving you a disclosure and doing it in a sensible, thoughtful, caring way. For a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is that they don't want to admit to you they've been lying to you for over 60 years. And then the other thing is that they are really a little bit uncertain and frightened themselves because the true scope of their awareness and what they know still has them in a state of shock. An event took place in California in 1954 at an Air Force base known as Muroc. This event had been planned and orchestrated by sensitive military, primarily naval individuals. And what it was essentially is that Eisenhower got aboard his plane, went out to this Muroc Air Force Base with a whole passel of guys from his administration, and including the Archbishop or Cardinal or Bishop of Los Angeles, a guy by the name of McIntyre. And this thing had been orchestrated and organized for some time because there had been communications between individuals in naval intelligence. And I say naval, and I say this again and again and again. My kid retired as a senior officer from the Navy just in November. The Navy has been up to here in this whole program from the very beginning, and they actually run the operation over at Groom Lake at S4. Anyhow, this event took place. I've had verification and proof that it actually transpired from sources impeccable. They flew Ike out there. Supposedly he was visiting a dentist. He had a problem. Well, bless his heart, he really did have a problem. When this was over, he ended up having a coronary. That impact upon him was so powerful that he ended up having a heart attack. Anyhow, what transpired in April of 1954? A group of others, I hate the word alien, I don't even like the word ETs, but whatever term you care to use, they came in. There were 3 ships. They were golden in color. They were discs primarily, circular discs, but they were fat discs. They had a high dome on the top and they had a big dome on the bottom. And these golden metallic discs came in, 3 of them, and they circled over the runway. And they made several passes. And Ike and this whole crowd are standing there with mouths dropping open. We had some generals, we had some admirals, and we had a couple of church authorities there, and poor old Ike. And these guys circled around for a time, and then one of the ships came in and landed on the tarmac right in front of the hangar where the receiving party, the welcoming party, was located. And they had cameras set up. There were at least 4, maybe 5 cameras. Everything was on film. All of the sounds, they picked up every word that was said. One of the ships come over and lands right in front of the hangar. The other 2 ships stayed hovering over the runway during the entire process. The stories I've heard from people I trust in that the whole thing went 3 days. There was a lot of exchange. You do not have a democratic republic, good people, and I'm sorry to have to tell you that. You all know about Roswell. Well, let me tell you, Roswell was one little tiny event. For God's sake, there were 3 crashes in that area in New Mexico within 30 days. Roswell was only a tiny piece of it. There have been crashes going on all over the country and all around the world for the last 40 years, 60 years. We've been picking up bits and pieces of hardware all over the damn planet. The Navy retrieved the UFO out of the waters off San Diego in 1941. And if you talk about parts, well, we picked up bits and pieces. Ooh, we loaded them up. We took them off here and we took them off there. Took them at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. We've taken them at several places. And then, God bless them, we've taken the bodies and a couple of survivors off as well. Well, that's ancient history. But I'm saying, forgive me if I repeat myself, your government that you thought you had ceased to exist in 1947. And 1947 was also a year where we created the Central Intelligence Agency, we created the National Security Organization, and we also signed a pact called the UKUSA Pact, UK-USA. Now, this pact we signed in 1947 was not just an accident. At the end of World War II, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United States signed this pact, and we have been like this ever since. But the people in the United Kingdom, in England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, they don't know any more about it in reality than most people out there do. Because one of the things about the UKUSA Pact was the lid came down on all the secrets, particularly the secrets of their reality, and the lid has been down ever since. I have to laugh sometimes when I hear Nick Pope speaking out. Many of you know who Nick Pope is. He's a delightful young man. He's a bright young man. He worked for the Ministry of Defense in Britain for a number of years. And he had the UFO desk. And Nick is a lot like some of our people. They sit at the desk and they see a little bit, but they don't see most of it. Because most of it never got to Nick's desk. So when he tells you that everything's been released, we're releasing it all over the place. Oh yeah, France has been releasing their classified material. The United Kingdom has been releasing their classified material, and the U.S. has begun releasing little bits and pieces of it. If you think they're releasing anything of real importance, forget it. The stuff that they're releasing is garbage. Nick, forgive me, wherever you are at this moment. I'm not putting you down. Most of the stuff they're releasing is garbage. The only bit of information that came out of France recently that was of any information or of any value was a report they called the Cometa Report. And many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with that. A number of retired French admirals and generals and scientists got together and put together a 30 or 40-page document called the Cometa Report about what they considered to be the reality of the extraterrestrial presence, which is a term I like to repeat from time to time, the UFO matter. And the Cometa Report said essentially that, damn it, we're not being told the truth, and we think it's time for everybody to fess up and get this information out. And the French were really ticked because, you know, they've had a chip on their shoulder from the very beginning that they've never really been shared with by the United Kingdom and the United States. Fighters over Europe in the 50s, and they were all over the damn place. We wondered then what they were all about. Well, bless his heart, Gordon now knows the answer. Oh, where were we? I was rambling, excuse me. We were talking about disclosure. There are lots of different things that have been happening. Let me get to some of this material here. One of the things that ticked me off the most is a little document known as Executive Order. I have in my fingers, I sound like one of those guys on TV. I have in my greasy fingers here an Executive Order, copy of it. This was signed by Slick Willie. Oh, excuse me, President Clinton. Slick Willie signed this on September the 29th, 1995. An executive order is something that you may not be aware of. An executive order is probably the most powerful piece of paper there is in our government. A president sits down, comes up with an idea, he has something he wants to do, he puts it on paper, he signs it, that becomes law. Nobody in Congress has to talk about it. Nobody in Congress is asked to see it. Nobody in Congress has to give approval to this. Because when the president signs it, it becomes law. Now that in itself, good God, Washington, Jefferson, Hamilton, those guys are spinning in their graves, I think. The fact that we've reached this point where an imperial president can sit in his office at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and sign an executive order which becomes the law of the land, and you cannot argue with it. This particular one that Clinton signed in September of '95 wiped away every rule in the Environmental Protection Act. There were a bunch of guys over here, not too far away, at Groom Lake, Site 51, who were dying horrible deaths because they had been exposed to something, smoke, chemical, whatever, during their job. And these guys, their flesh was falling off their bodies, their skin was rupturing, the flesh was falling. They were in incredible pain, and they were dying. And their doctors and some attorneys tried to find out what it was that was causing this. If the doctors could find out what was causing it, they could possibly help those guys deal with this, and they could come up with some way of treating them. Well, not only did the government deny the request for information on what that material was that was killing these guys, those bastards in Washington even denied the damn facility didn't even exist. And this is after the Soviets had taken photographs from orbit proving the existence of Groom Lake and Site 51. And the Soviets were good enough to let us have photographs of the damn place. And yet your government in Washington says, oh, that doesn't exist. That place doesn't exist. No. And they wouldn't share any information, and those guys continued to die. I don't know how many of them passed away. I lost track of it over the years. Let me tell you one other small thing.